Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the fifth meeting of the Building Energy Code Working Group. It is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. I am Scott Campbell, representative from St. Johnsbury. And we'll start by just going around the room, introducing ourselves. Hello, Tom.
Tom Bursey with AIA Vermont.
Ben Wolaski, Department of Public Service.
Kirk Peltier, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board.
East Bass, Efficiency Vermont.
Keith Levinson, Department of Public Service.
Lando Burr, Division of Fire Safety.
Kelly Launder, Department of Public Service.
And Peter Tucker, Vermont Association of Realtors.
Andrew.
Andrew Brewer, not on the committee, but here on behalf of the home builders and architects.
And let's see, online we have, so I got Jim Bradley, looks like. And next would be Jennifer Colin.
Hi there, Jennifer Colin, Vermont Office of Professional Regulation.
Chris Burns.
Good afternoon, Chris Burns, Burlington Electric Department.
Karen Horn.
Karen Horn, I'm representing Vermont Gas, EEU.
I cannot see the next person. Anybody read that?
Read AI meeting notes.
No,
Oh, and,
That's the note.
and Jan.
and please.
Hi, I'm Ann Janda. I'm with Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. I am here sitting in for Chris Campany on behalf of VAPTA.
Great, thank you. Richard.
Fantasy Energy Futures Group.
Zach.
Zach Tyler, Energy Futures Group.
Sarah. Sarah's not here right now. Dragana.
Hi everyone, Dragana Tipo, Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships.
And looks like Liz at the bottom there.
Hi, Liz Steele, member of the public and Greensboro Energy Committee.
And Jim, you're back.
Yes, Jim Bradley with the Vermont Builders and Remodelers Association.
Okay, and we've also been joined since we introduced ourselves in the room by Senator Seth Bongartz. And also Sandy. It's in. Sitting over in the cheap seats. Oh, here she comes. And Sarah's back too.
Hi, sorry, you would think 5 years into Zooming I would know how to turn on my stuff, but I'm here. Sarah Meerhoff with the Associated General Contractors.
Great. All right. Thank you. So this is our our fourth meeting. I don't remember what number meeting it is. It's our fifth meeting out of six. So I guess we have one more where we're going to, I hope, approve a final report. Today, we're going to talk about the draft recommendations to include in the final report. And we've been working on this now since last meeting. I guess I would like to start also by acknowledging that this has been a long process, and I think we're all getting pretty exhausted by it. This is the third year of a working group, and actually the fourth year if you include my first year when I was a freshman legislator. In the summer, we had a sort of a volunteer, a non-official working group. So we've been working on this a long time. I think people are getting pretty tired of it and pretty frustrated with how hard it is to get something done with this structure or lack of structure that we have now. Lack of residential building codes is really a huge impediment. We have no real administrative infrastructure for administering codes, to say nothing of enforcing or imposing penalties. And that is really it gives us a lack of leverage for inspiring compliance. So what do? We also have a lack of support from the administration really to create a comprehensive administrative infrastructure. And there are understandable reasons for that. We have a housing crisis. We have a weak regulatory system, and adding regulatory hurdles is not what a lot of people want to do. So we have to figure out what is legislatively and politically feasible, but that's what I have to do, and Senator Bongartz has to do. But the working group has to make recommendations to the legislature about what the ultimate structure should be, and try to come up with steps to get there. So I've mentioned this dichotomy in the past, and I guess I just want to emphasize that again. I hope the working group will not feel constrained by what I'm constrained by, what legislators are constrained by, and come up with and vote on what you all think is really the path forward. So what I hope we do is lay the foundation for a future regulatory framework that can be that we can lay a foundation that we can build on for a future regulatory framework, I guess is the way I want to put it. Part of that is adopting a residential building code, which the department or the Division of Fire Safety is, I think, still in the process of vetting. And another idea that has come up recently is creating a system for municipalities to create their own administrative infrastructure and enforcement for energy codes in their jurisdictions. And I was talking with folks in Energy Futures Group who intend to submit a proposal to the Energy Action Network folks to create I think it's called an action team to explore that possibility. So that's another angle. It's sort of a further iteration of federalism, you might say. So I feel like that's where we're at, and we're going to go through now the priority recommendations that I think Ben sent around to everyone, and try to come up with. Well, let's see. Where's the agenda? Does anyone need a paper agenda? Anybody need a paper agenda over there? We have some copies. First, before we do all that, we got to do the agenda niceties and approve the minutes from the last meeting. Anyone wish to make a motion to approve the minutes? Okay. Senator Bongartz makes a motion. We have to have a second for that.
I don't think you have to second.
Yeah, okay, all right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, motions are minutes are adopted. Any updates to the current agenda, which was also sent around? And that agenda is to first pick up some of the items that we did not get to talk about in the last meeting, and then go on to the list of priority recommendations that Ben had sent around. So with that, the first bullet point on this list of recommendations not discussed in the last meeting has to do with whether the energy codes in Vermont are customized versions of model codes, and they're pretty heavily customized. The architects and builders have sort of evolved a recommendation that during the course of this summer and fall, that we should really go back to just model codes as much as possible and make as few amendments as possible. The logic of that is that it would make adopting updates much quicker. It would make providing materials to builders and architects much quicker and at no expense to the state. The state would not have to do updates. But the downside is that, of course, the modifications that are made to those model codes by the Public Service Department are in service of the energy policy goals that we have enshrined in the Comprehensive Energy Plan and statute and elsewhere. So that's a discussion that I think is really a broader policy discussion before it really could be implemented legislatively, but it can certainly be talked about in this group, and I think I would entertain a straw poll vote on whether we should move towards model codes or maintain sort of the current system. Kelly.
Can I just add a little bit of clarification on our modifications? I want to make sure it's clear. It's not just modified based on energy policy. Like in 2020, the New Buildings Institute was part of our contractor team, and we made a lot of modifications. They actually write code language for the IECC, and we made a lot of modifications based on their suggestions to make clarifications or corrections that were in the IECC. It also enables us to do things like the IECC may propose 25% of the parking spots are electric vehicles, but we only propose 1% or 2%. So I just want to make it clear, it's not always just in one direction to meet energy policy. There's actually a lot of other changes that happen for other purposes, including making things clear. I tried to keep those at a very minimum in 2024 because there was so much in 2020. We were like rewriting the code and it was very time consuming. So I would say that the department does not have in itself a desire to make vast modifications. They are for a purpose when they're made, whether it's energy policy or other reasons, corrections, clarifications, et cetera. Just want to get that out there.
That's great. Thank you, Kelly. Tom, do you have thoughts about this, or Jim?
Yeah, I mean, a simple way to state this is we currently use the IECC, but it's modified. And so I think our position is that we think that modification gets us out of the education, the printing, all the things that that the International Code Council provides. We're no longer able to use those things because we've modified the code so much. So it's not that we would like to do either or, it's just that the modifications from the IECC that become the state codes, they're based in the IECC anyway. And so what we're saying is less modifications, maybe to the point that we can use all of the things that go along with the International Code Council, the education, the printing, the answering of questions, so they have an answer line we can call and get clarifications for codes. All of those things get more difficult with the more that we modify the codes, those nationally accepted standard codes.
Yeah. Okay. Jim, or did you see somebody else?
I have a question.
You have a question?
Well, Jim can go for it.
Jim, you have thoughts on this?
No, I think going to a standardized code system that does not have a lot of different modification is important, but it's at the same time, I would support that, but I still want to see balanced ventilation inside there because of the health and safety, building durability issues, and everything else that we get our buildings tighter and make better assemblies. We've got to address indoor air quality and how things perform. But that being said, I see a big gap for builders because they don't have. They're trying to keep the code straight and they're trying to say, okay, what's the difference between, what we're doing, stretch code, regular code, international code, that type of thing. I think that if we can keep it standardized or get it standardized, that would be much better. And it would decrease a lot of the confusion that's out there in our building trades, in my opinion.
Anybody else have thoughts on this? Greg?
I just had a question I talked to Sandy a little bit about this. This would be, I guess, for Sandy, for you guys that have looked into this more. The states that my understanding is a lot of states just adopt it and some states tweak it a little bit. How much can you tweak it and still use their program, their sort of tools that our tweaks sort of don't allow for, in a sense?
The answer to that for Tom. So what has been discussed so far is only 3 modifications to the base code. We need to modify AHJ to AHJ where one exists, just because we don't have administration now in Vermont. And the other would be the balanced ventilation, which Jim mentioned. And the third would be the stretch code, which would just be adding 1 section, which is what we already do, 407, because of the statute in Vermont. So those are minor tweaks, and the majority of the IECC, the base code, would be definitely usable in the exam. And so it would be directly applicable. And the exam already being made as a standard nationalized exam is a major benefit of using the base code. We can use that. We can use the National Technical Hotline, which is free, and courses, educational courses.
And go ahead.
Just to follow on that those aren't the only changes. There actually are things in statute that I don't think it would necessarily affect the test, but like a long home provision, owner builder. So there are other things in statute that would have to be modified. I'm not saying that would affect the test, but I just want to be clear, there are other modifications based on statute that need to be made beyond what Sandy just said.
And Sandy, again, I was talking to Sandy a little bit about this, and I was curious, like what drives IECC policy? Where are they going? Like, one of the open questions we have in the state is, and the New Building Institutes gave us a sort of that step chart of EUI as an example of where we want to go over time. Like because if we were to do something like this, we're sort of more dependent on where they're going and where their pathway is over time. So that was an open question that I had. And it sounds like they do have a pathway that they work on with EPA about where they're going to sort of get to this not clear net zero standard eventually, right?
Well, my understanding, I mean, Barry is probably our expert on ICC, and he's out of country right now, so we didn't really discuss this, but my understanding is that their net zero is a real net zero, including putting on the renewable energy component, not necessarily net zero ready.
Right.
And again, similar to other things I just said, like they do have an electric vehicle infrastructure component, but it's not the same as what we've adopted because of feedback we get from stakeholders, right? So there's a lot of things that they might have that I think you'd have to weigh, like, would you really want net zero that includes installing the renewable energy? Like, I think you have to be really careful. And I think with as little to few modifications that's it's not a very good direction. Like that's not a statute type direction. I think that'd be really hard to interpret.
Yep.
And we certainly do, although probably some people on this call don't believe this, but we really do listen to the stakeholder process and the feedback we get. We really do take that into account, either backing off provisions or adding provisions to what's in the ICC. So. But I'll also say, in your point, the process was changed a number of years ago where states used to be involved and had votes in the process, and that changed. So states no longer have direct input into the ICC as we used to.
Why not?
ICC restructured and they made that decision. So all the states fought against that, but that's what they chose to do. So none of the states have a say.
So who sets policy for IECC?
Their board.
Their board.
Through committees. So there is a governmental structure to the International Code Council. They just had their annual meeting in Ohio. It is broken down regionally, so there is a regional voice to send that voice up. There are A and B code change proposals that are regionalized and can be from the local level. They do go up to a next level, which is a regional level. And then it does go to a board, which sits at a committee that makes the final votes, which is happening this week.
But the states no longer have votes. Your input.
Sandy?
Adding to what Landon's saying, there is a pretty darn thorough process that goes grassroots out. The committees look at amendments that other states are making to the current version. And any voting member of ICC can contribute suggestions for amendments. And in most states, the local authority having jurisdiction is sending representatives to the special groups. So give the example of Maine, where Paul, whatever, I can't think of his last name. Had a huge impact on the IBCC because he really cared about it.
Well, so as I think I said, Steve, your thoughts?
From, I think one of the most impactful changes, differentials between RBs versus what it would be the standard model IECC code that has an effect on people actually putting this stuff into action out in the field is the package plus points approach. Really, I think, created a level of confusion to the proprietors, the contractors, to people trying to understand how to apply the code. When that came into effect with the 2020 code, it just added a whole new span and layer to what's a relatively straightforward prescriptive pathway for compliance, right? It was in the with the intent
that was added at Public Service Department.
Well, through the code update process.
Yeah.
And I think that was intended to provide more flexibility rather than a prescribed high jump in changes to, that would have been mandated as required. But I do think a little bit was lost in that process for the fact that it became more overwhelming to a lot of builders and contractors of not being able to understand what's being asked of them because they see this huge list of information and other components. And it's for people who aren't navigating this on a regular basis because they're not being told to account that they have to look at the code and follow the code and reference it as a building supposed to be. But, when we do trainings and outreach, we're usually showing them for the very first time the ICC's website and showing them the codes for the first time. And then when they start to see this huge list of information, I think that's a bit confounding. And that to me, I think is the one piece of as a considerable differential between the model IECC code versus how we've modified that for implementation in the interest of trying, again, make it more flexible for compliance with the builders. But I think how it's actually affecting the builder base or contractor base, it's made it more confusing. So.
Yeah, and just in response to that, that is why we did it. It's one of those things, there's always a push and pull. We want flexibility, so we did that. The department would have no issue if everyone's like, no, we don't want that. That didn't work. We want just prescriptive, but it's a balance. Like even in this last group of stakeholder meetings did not hear a large voice of saying, we want the point system to go away. We want just prescriptive. In fact, we narrowed the number because we heard there's too many options. Everyone has a different perspective, but we don't have any stake in the game of having a point system. It was surely to serve who we heard, and we're happy to not have that if that is too confusing. We're really hearing, we do a lot of stakeholder outreach, way more than I think almost any other department does in the rulemaking process. We do a whole stakeholder process before we can go into the rulemaking process. So we're trying to serve the builders. We're not trying to make it complicated or not understandable.
Sure.
But we have a lot of different voices, and sometimes the repetitive loudest voice, if you hear one say, I don't like the point system, but 10 say, we love the flexibility, that's where we go. And I understand that that's based on participation and those voices being there, right? But
kind of reminds me of this committee. Well, as I said at the outset, I think this is an issue that is, it's a big issue. and I think bigger than we're gonna resolve here. I think the working group can, it's not only a big issue for this working group in terms of policy, but it's also a big issue for the legislature in terms of policy. And the legislature would need to take a lot of testimony in order to make this kind of change. But at least to mandate this kind of change. But I think the working group can make its own recommendations. So I guess what I would like to do, instead of spending the rest of the time talking about this one issue, is let's have a show of hands of people who.
Like Richard, might have a comment.
Oh, sorry, I missed you. Richard, go ahead.
Thank you. I feel like we're sort of going at this blind. Those of us that are familiar with the code know what the changes are from IECC. But maybe somebody's done this, but I haven't seen it. Has anybody done a side-by-side comparison to really show what the Vermont changes are and what we would lose if we moved away to just the IECC? I think it'd be helpful to have that information in front of us before making any decisions. So that was my suggestion.
Okay. Sandy had offered to do that, but hasn't been able to get to it. Maybe we could, so we have one more meeting. It's only a couple of weeks away, November 6th, where we will be approving or making modifications to the draft final report. I guess what I would, well, we could go two ways there. We could either take a vote right now about whether to support recommending adopting just the model code with as few modifications as possible, although that's a little bit squishy language, versus continuing with the same process that we have now with RBs and CBs. We could take that vote now, or we could wait on that until Sandy's had a chance to do that. Which way would people like to go with that?
A tweak on that, could we vote on, I mean, I could see myself supporting asking the department to work with AIA in Vermont Builders and Remodelers. The research that they've done in talking to all the builders that they work with, you guys have gotten all this feedback from the people that you know, and Steve just said it, that they have a lot of problems with the way the code's currently written. I could see this committee recommending that the department look into that issue. How can we make the code, how can we get some of these operational advantages into the code by having maybe a pathway that's more prescriptive that people can use and still have the ability maybe to tweak it as we have been? Is there a way we can have our cake and eat it too? And maybe that could be a recommendation.
I would like it to be clear too, because I've seen two different things, whether we're talking about going forward or we're talking about going back. Like I think there's a proposal to go backwards and adopt 2018 IECC. So I just want to be clear what we're talking about.
Well, one other curious thing I heard you say before, Kelly, that you would have to tweak certain things. One thing that Sandy told me was most states adopt the code that's 3 years old because the codes have issues. IECC has problems, so they'll come out with 2024, but then everybody's adopting the older code because it's worked out the kinks and the bugs, which makes sense to me. That would be part of it, I think, to get a code that didn't have the tweaks that were problems. And that would be, I think, part of, if we were to adopt it, that would make sense to me. That we're adopting the cycle behind. Assuming again that they're on some kind of pathway we agree with, and we could work on that over time, but
I personally haven't seen a layout of a pathway.
Yeah.
Here's they can say backwards, generally we've done 8% increase, but I've never seen this is where we're headed to this point, the department has said as far as an energy policy. We're net zero ready. I have not seen that.
Thanks. So I guess, I don't understand the IECC code very well. I'll be that end of this discussion. But, you know, to say with few or no changes concerns me, especially the fact that the state doesn't have a lot of input to the IUCC code. You know, I think it makes sense, you know, if they're a you know, regulatory body that is, you know, working on this, that we use it. But I wouldn't want to handcuff the agencies in terms of, you know, making it work. You know, when we heard from Mike Rocher on the residential building code, you know, he said that he would need to go through that code, you know, basically line by line, because there's stuff that just doesn't work in Vermont.
Or it's covered by some other code or something.
Yeah, you know, so I think I would be comfortable saying, you know, Vermont, you know, should, you know, use the IECC code, yes, but, you know, not to the, you know, with few or no changes, given the fact that we don't get a lot of input on that as a state.
And it also occurs to me that you have architects and builders on the advisory group, right? That is, so there is an avenue for input, right?
You know, I do just want to reemphasize that there is a process that does have checks and balances through the rulemaking process, where I may not be as educated in the IECC also, but I do understand codes and standards, and I do understand the ICAR and LCAR process for rulemaking and the public comment session and reaching out to our stakeholders. I don't believe in limiting through the definition or the terms of that process. I do think that's a fair and equitable process. I do think we all have an opportunity to learn what works and doesn't work through those processes. But I would not want to limit it and say, you know, adopt something in its entirety. I'm going to tell you I can't do that through my 304 code books. I have to have some flexibility to be able to make it work for Vermont.
Okay, great. Well, I guess here's what I'm going to propose. Let's have a vote on which direction to go, whether to adopt the recommendation from architects and builders to adopt IEC, and this would be prospective, not retrospective, but adopt a IECC with as few modifications as possible, recognizing that's kind of a squishy way of putting it, versus continuing with the process as it is now and perhaps urging more direct input from the architects and engineers, from the people in the field, architects and builders rather, from the people in the field who actually have to apply these things. So.
And can we clarify, I'm sorry, is this members? We're talking about.
Members of the working group?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, it's not. all of us.
Everybody.
Like, department doesn't have 3 votes.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Do you want me to read off the list, or are you just doing a straw poll?
Oh, that would be great.
Okay, I had to put it down. Representative Campbell.
I'll go last.
Okay. Do you want me to?
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, what is the question? I'm confused on what we're yaying or naying.
Basically, we're talking about whether the vote is which way to go with this recommendation to adopt model codes with as few modifications as possible versus continue with the existing process of RBs and CBs, which are based on model codes, but have sometimes significant modifications for state policy. And
so we're going around and saying option A or option B, it's not a yay or nay question, right?
Yes, right. That's right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Yes, can I clarify? Option B, though, is not just business as usual.
Well, option B is continue with the existing process of RBs and CBs.
But with input, with more input to get it, to deal with these operational issues.
Yes.
That would benefit from a more model code.
Much closer, right? The two points now are.
Well, that may not be what you were saying, but I'm just saying, you know, that would be more appealing to me. I feel like if I vote for A, I don't think we have enough input to go to say A. As my personal view is, I don't know that I can vote for A, but I don't really want to vote for B if B is not qualified to do something else. Because I do think they're bringing up a good point about the way our code is customized and the problems it's creating.
Right.
Particularly given one of the goals of this, the whole issue around enforcement and, getting people to do this and training. It's like, this is something that I think it needs to be looked at. Right? I guess. So how are you thinking of B?
Well, I'm thinking it would be as the existing process for RBs and creating RBs and CBs. And as I understand it, there is an opportunity for input from all stakeholders, including architects and builders, in that process. And it would be incumbent upon representatives of the architects and builders to bring their points to that group and to that process. This does make me think actually of another thing that this group might want to take a vote on, which is maybe I'll wait until actually we finish this, but but it's about recommending that what I'm thinking of is about recommending that we go through that process again sometime in the near future. Right now, it's just a completely optional in statute right now. But let's go through the first A or B vote, which is A is recommending that the state adopt model energy codes with as few modifications as possible. And B is continue the current RBs and CBs adoption process.
Just to be clear too, the statute does say that we need to look at the ICC. It's part of the process. That's the starting point.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's what's in statute. We don't just make up our own what we want. Okay. All right, so we go back to the list. Senator, would you like also to go last with the representative? Okay. So.
If I have to vote, I vote B.
B,
But
okay.
I'm also wondering, there's a lot of similarities between the two, and I'm wondering whether we could actually just get to one, because I think what we're recognizing is that what we gain with the model code is clarity and ease of use for people in the field. And I think we're all recognizing that there's legitimacy to that argument. And what we give up is the ability, if we just do it one or the other, it's the ability to really tailor it as needed through this process. And, I'm sitting here thinking that in some ways what we're really saying is start with the model code and be judicious in changes in a way that allows us to use all of the benefits of the model code for in the field. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to, if we're really almost all saying the same thing. I don't know if we are or not.
I think it's a gray zone of distinction between these two options at this point. And we also can't ignore the statutory requirements to the state of our obligations for climate related goals that are totally aligned and incumbent with why Arby's is what it is.
Right.
So A becomes a very challenging choice or option if that's not considered into that pathway.
Well, I think A would, sort of as part of A, we would be talking about advising the legislature to make changes to statute that take those obligations off of energy code. I think that is part of A.
So if I have to,
I think that should be acknowledged if we were to vote on it.
That is important.
But if I have to vote,
I'm sorry?
B.
B, okay. Does everybody get that last little bit there? So the point is being made that we have in statute and in fixed policy in Vermont requirements that are reflected in the RBs and CBs process now. And by recommending that we use model codes without many modifications, we are requesting the legislature to remove those requirements.
Which would include
From
being
this process.
consistent with energy policy.
Yeah.
This is the big one.
Yeah.
Okay. Claire?
Okay.
Keep going through the list. Clear as
Just trying to make this faster, but.
Okay, the department is going to vote B surprisingly, and DFS.
We're gonna go with B.
Okay.
With respect to the process that I think can incorporate all of A within B.
And Tom, you're representing AIA today?
I'm representing AIA voting A, but with the same caveats that were spoken earlier about how there's a gray area between.
Yeah.
Okay, Associated General Contractors, Sarah, you're voting on their
Hi.
behalf?
Yes, I would say kind of B with the caveat that what I've heard from members is that kind of uniformity relatively among our neighboring states would be very helpful. It's difficult for contractors who work over state lines to, tailor make or abide by all these differing regulations across state lines. That being said, I what I'm hearing is that we're taking that into account as we pursue the B option is what that sounds like. I hope so. B with a caveat.
Okay, Chris Burns, BED.
B.
B. Jen, OPR.
I'm going to abstain. I think Richard Frazee made a good point. For those of us who don't work in these codes and are not familiar with them, a side by side would be really helpful to see what we're losing or what we might be sacrificing going one way or the other. So I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thanks. BGS, Karen, are you?
B.
B. Efficiency Vermont, Steve?
Say for Efficiency Vermont, B with the acknowledgement that Arby's perhaps should be modified in a manner to be more aligned with the standard model code. With some serious consideration of adjustments of alignment.
Okay. VBRA, Jim Bradley.
I'll be going with A.
Okay. And Regional Planning Commission, Ann.
VAPTA doesn't have a position on this, so VAPTA will abstain.
Abstain. Did I get all the members? Oh, I'm so sorry, Peter Tucker.
And it will go B.
Is there a representative for Vermont League of Cities and Towns here?
Yes, this is Samantha Sheehan from VLCT. We're also going to abstain. We don't have a position.
Okay.
May I just make a point of clarification? This, especially given the very valid concerns that both Richard and Jennifer raised, this is a straw poll, correct?
Well, we're trying to decide what recommendations to include in the final report. So at some point we have to decide. So that's why we're taking a vote here. Every recommendation, every member of the working group will have an opportunity to take exception to any of the recommendations in the final report, as we have in the previous 2 years' reports.
Okay, I just have some process concerns in terms of voting on a question without having that kind of side by side as both Jennifer and Richard. I just have process concerns with how this vote is being conducted.
Yeah, I understand your concern. Usually, like, that's why for the other ones that we had already discussed, there's written, right? Which I think is more appropriate, but I agree, like Scott started this by saying it was a straw. So,
right, and that's why I'm confused, because that's what was said at the beginning of that vote. So I'm just.
Why don't we do this, Sarah? I think that you bring up a valid concern. Why don't we say, and Richard mentioned it also, that we'll consider this a straw poll for this meeting, and we hope Sandy can put together the side by side before the next meeting, and we can have a final vote on that next meeting.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Okay, I mean, is that necessary when the Bs is definitely the majority? Like if you're going back, if you're getting asking for a direction by the vote, the straw proposal vote, it's definitely the Bs have it. So I question continuing.
Oh boy, all right.
Well, you gotta add me soon. You didn't say me. You gotta take my vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct.
So I'll be B with all the caveats that Steve said and the senator and other people, same type of caveats to try to make the code more aligned. And I would say to your point, Kelly, and to Richard's suggestion that I could see a lot of the Bs changing to As if in fact there was more alignment than less, as an example. I'm not saying that would happen, but that could happen. Right?
It's also
So that-
my
if we were to vote
concern,
again,
yes.
yeah, there could be a lot more As if we find out that the code's really advancing very similar to what we've seen, what we're doing.
Representative Handel.
All right.
Did not vote either.
I did not vote either. I really look at this as I'm taking advice from the group. But, so,
It's a fun way out of that.
All right, well, we're going to move on now. Since we were trying to get through that and all of these items here in less than 30 minutes. The next bullet point here is should energy professionals middle pathway, EFG's June presentation be pursued. So that has to do with putting energy professionals on site, and of course there's a funding issue with that. I wonder, Richard, if you would like to talk about that for just a brief minute or two. Sorry to put you on the spot. Are you there?
Yes, I was not prepared to talk about this, but I could.
Richard, I'm happy to speak to it.
Go ahead,
That's
Zach. I
helpful.
was going to pull up the presentation to just.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so the concept that we had proposed was requiring energy professionals to participate in the process essentially as a means of verification for RB's compliance. And as part of that, we're sort of looking to the EEU incentives to help offset some of the costs associated with energy professional services. There was some testimony to the working group regarding what those fees are for different services that those professionals can provide. But yeah, the concept was essentially adjusting statute to require energy professionals to be involved from an RB's compliance perspective.
All right. Anybody have any questions about that? Should we have these are leftover recommendations or from last meeting that we did not get a chance to discuss. Sandy has a comment?
Yeah, so I remain very confused about this question from your poll because this was not what the BECWG recommended last year. And it's not even the pathway that was recommended by Energy Futures Group. Energy Futures Group recommended a fire safety verification for compliance. So I thought maybe you were asking about whether there should be encouragement of the profession. The whole question is confusing. Are you talking about having every single building in Vermont be verified by a HERS rater, which is what the middle pathway is? Or are you talking about encouraging the profession to grow and get certified?
I was under the understanding that the energy professionals pathway did not involve a HERS rating. It was not a HERS rater. It was a different alternative technical support or project support, but not including or incumbent on them being a HERS rater.
HERS raters would be presumably one of the recognized professions, but there are, we didn't define the energy professionals specifically. We acknowledge that there are HERS raters, there are BPI professionals, there are others, architects or engineers that have certifications, but that standard, we didn't specifically define that, but that would be part of the process.
Jennifer, you have a question?
I just wanted to make folks aware that obviously OPR regulates many professions, and before we begin a regulatory program, we do what's called a sunrise assessment, which is laid out in Title 26, Chapter 57. And there are certain criteria that have to be met in order for OPR to regulate in a profession. So I just wanted to, since OPR is one of the potential homes for this type of pathway, I wanted folks to be aware that that's a process that we have to complete, and you know, that definitely takes some time to do.
So that would be part of the implementation of that recommendation if the recommendation was adopted.
Well, if the recommendation is adopted, that's still not a guarantee that that assessment would ultimately result in a finding that that profession should be regulated. Like, we have to do research and stakeholder outreach and public hearings and whatnot to determine whether a profession should be regulated through OPR or at all, actually.
Okay. This is so easy.
So, and the Division of Fire Safety has the same roadblocks, along with, we're really not the institutional knowledge holders of this subject matter to be able to guide that process for the three-part question: the credentials, the implementation, or the funding, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yes.
Middle pathway, right. So what this is, sometimes I can understand what we're talking about here. What we're saying is that energy professionals would be hired by builders to inspect single-family homes at whatever cost that is as an option. Is that what this proposes?
Yes. Sorry, Richard, did you respond to that?
I just was confirming, yes, that was the presumption.
Right.
And I believe also in the way that my reading of it was that the energy professional would be in the position of verifying compliance to the builder by way of that pathway.
Correct.
Okay.
So they'd be like a police force for this. So.
They'd be verifying on behalf of the builder.
Who gets the liability?
Verifying on behalf of the state, not be.
What's that?
Verifying on behalf of the state?
No, this being, to my understanding of this, pathways right now is a builder can certify on their own by either prescriptive compliance or using ResCheck, the UI alternative pathway, or they can choose to hire a third-party HERS rater who does some verification of as-built and the ERI pathway for compliance. So what this is, I'm understanding it being, is a middle pathway where there's another level of technical field code support type person who would be not doing necessarily a HERS rating, and it's not the builder complying on their own, self-verifying. They're using a third party. And so this third party is down this middle path where they'd be verifying on behalf of the builder. But it's not a HERS rating. So
it could be, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. But it could be any of those three pathways, compliance pathways. Having a third party performing the performance testing, which is required in the code, blower door test, and verifying that what is on the certificate is in the building. They wouldn't be working for the state, but they'd be providing that information to the builder, and the builder would then submit the certificate where it needs to be submitted to the town clerk or otherwise.
But it'd be requiring this component. It's not voluntary. It's required.
Right, it'd be updating statute to require the energy professional involvement in the project.
What is that? I don't want to get off subject. I have a hard time following that path of what incentive there is either for compliance if the end result is the liability is still open-ended or the builder's at the end. Or we're just adding another person to the process, which increases the cost. And what are we getting out of that viability? What are we getting out of that cost? Would be
Verification of what's installed and diagnostic testing from a certified professional.
Sandy?
That's it. That's the logic behind the proposal.
I have 3 quick questions for EFG, but also a comment. The energy raters exist now in Vermont. There are 8 of them, and for the whole state. And in any of the scenarios, they would continue to operate, particularly for performance-based projects. So they're not, the discussion is not whether they're going away. The 3 questions for EFG is, 1, did you not recommend the DFS path? And the second one is, did we not correct your numbers? So the cost for this performance rating is more really $3,000 to $5,000 per house.
Sandy, that would be for a full,
$500 for fire safety.
that would be, those costs would be for a full HERS rating. There was testimony to this working group that there are other fees for lesser services available. So I think that's an important thing to note. I would need to, yes, I believe our primary recommendation was that DFS be named the AHJ and that this alternative pathway be considered were that not to be a palatable approach. And I'm sorry, I missed the third question.
The third question, so a performance rater can't really just do part of it. And I think that was what we got out of the testimony. For this to be a valid alternative pathway, they have to complete the process and turn in the paper to actually have a certification. And that process in most of Vermont costs $3,000 to $5,000 per house.
That would be for a complete HERS rating, but as Steve just indicated, there are 3 pathways to RB's compliance. Could be the res check, or it could be the prescriptive pathway or a HERS rating. So an energy professional could provide any one of those services for any one of those 3 pathways. The HERS rating one would be the most expensive, but there are 2 other alternatives.
So I think maybe we don't have to design the entire system in order to recommend exploring this as a possibility. Let's see, there's other questions up there.
Yeah,
I think your hand.
2 other people have their hands up.
Yep, Anne?
Yeah, I've been working with Zach and Richard on this, so I just wanted to clarify a couple things. And one is that I think, and Zach and Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, that the idea is to consider possibly changing statute to make it optional for a municipality to make it a requirement that the person who signs off on the certificate is the energy professional, not the builder. Is that correct?
Yes, right now in statute, a HERS rater, HERS rating is one of the alternative compliance pathways. If a municipality were to choose to go down this route, that is where the gray area is, and that is where the legislation would need to be clarified in terms of authority, whether the municipality has authority to enforce the code locally in their jurisdiction.
Right, to be clear, a HERS rater or any other energy professional can sign the certificate. It does not have to be a builder. Just says if it isn't any of those others, then it has to be the builder. So a HERS rater could sign the certificate now.
Right. So yeah, I think the difference with what's being proposed is that statute doesn't enable municipalities to require that the certificate be signed by an energy professional. I also wonder if in this question, there's the idea of providing funding through the EEUs to help pay for this energy professional. Is that in the question as well, Richard and Zach?
That was our presumption that there was progress moving in that direction. And that would certainly reduce the energy professional's fee if the EEUs were able to provide an incentive covering some or all of the costs of the energy professional.
So I guess I just want to interrupt here and say, we don't have to design the entire system in order to vote on here. What we're doing is talking about making a recommendation that this be pursued as an option, that this concept be pursued as an option. So I'd like to wrap this up and move on. We've already been here an hour, and we're not even through the first half hour of questions. Jim, quickly.
Just as we're making this recommendation, as an energy professional myself, when I go to these sites for builders, you're not just going to show up one time, do a final blower door test and say everything meets compliance, because you got to get into the workings of the building. That's why with the HERS rating compliance, that allows for the projected rating up front when you're looking at the initial designs before you are actually building the assembly. And then, prior to drywall going on, you're making sure things were signed or installed correctly as per the original design. And where that wasn't, then you make, notes on that. Because if you're going to sign off on that as an energy professional, you're accepting a huge amount of liability. And so in one respect, it's not as attractive to just to say, well, it's going to be a really light touch version. You're just going to do a final blower door, help them with their certificate, because you have to verify what's going on. And each visit to site is another expense. It may not be the $3,000 to $5,000, but it's just not a few $100s for that type of engagement. That's on one end. On the other end, in working with builders like this, I know I've been able to work with them and help head off a lot of problems that they would have had down the road because they were engaged and you serve as a resource. So there's some really great benefits to it, but there's also a real cost too. So I don't want us to look at the higher end version of the HERS rating and say, well, that's really to the one extreme, because you're still going to have a lot of engagement up front with the builder and on site during construction before the final blower door test is done. Just I want everyone to consider that.
Okay, thank you. Samantha, you have a quick thought?
Hi, thank you. I just want to make sure everyone's clear that municipalities do have the authority currently to adopt energy code, be it RB's or code of the legislative body's design. It must be adopted through ordinance. I'm not clear on if there's a lack of authority to require an energy professional to inspect or sign off, but I don't know why there wouldn't be, because there are existing municipal building codes and component technical permit requirements that have sort of similar comparable requirements, like such as for water connection and electric. I also just want to be clear that it's VLCT's position that there be no such requirement of a municipality to adopt municipal energy code or to have to accept and file the RBs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. There is some question about whether municipalities actually have that authority from that line of authority granted from the legislature. But we'll come back to that at another time. So I guess quick one, Tom?
Very quickly, I'm not sure there's a differentiation between if a contractor is hiring someone, staff, or hiring a sub-consultant to do this energy rating. If there's 3 paths for compliance, they're still having to go through those 3 paths. So the work that's being done is being done, whether it's being done in-house or out-of-house, shouldn't make a huge financial difference.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I guess we will treat all of these things as straw. Oh, Samantha, you have another comment, or your hand's still up?
No, sorry, my hand was still up. Thanks.
Why don't we try to speed through this as much as possible with just a hand raise, straw poll on all these points, and maybe what we'll do is hope that we have this all on paper and can make a formal vote at the next meeting. So everyone in favor of including an energy professional, a recommendation that an energy professional pathway be explored as a compliance mechanism? Anybody in favor of that?
Jen has her hand up.
Jen, is your hand up for that, or is it hand up for some other reason?
No, my hand was up in favor.
In favor, okay. No one else in favor of including an energy pathway as a recommendation? All opposed to including an energy pathway as a recommendation? Okay.
I just don't think there's enough information. We don't have information about cost, so I can't.
Just to be clear, if OPR were to study this as a pathway, that's something that would be part of what we explore is what's the need, what's the cost, what's
Sure.
the harm to the public if this isn't done, what's the benefit in the space to having this done. So that would be part of a study that OPR could do.
So, Ben, were you taking notes about that, or is somebody?
Yeah, I think there's one yes, everyone else is nay. So,
I got 3 or 4 nays, I don't know.
okay, two abstentions, okay.
The way that Jen just described it, I'll go yes, because if it's exploring it, I'm not exploring it.
Yeah.
So
I'd vote yes too. If it's
but
Still abstaining.
I have to abstain. I wasn't authorized to vote on this.
All right. Let's see. Next thing is about DFS's record management system. Do we want to vote on this?
It's already happening.
Well, Lennon, maybe you can give us a quick update on this.
So there's an A, B, and a C here. So the primary statement, the Division of Fire Safety is currently going through an RMS system development and build out. We are a good ways away from completion. Currently, whatever is captured within the Division of Fire Safety's jurisdiction will be part of our new records management system as part of our process.
So you will be recording compliance certificates for CBs and RBs for the buildings that are under your jurisdiction.
That is correct.
Okay. And then there was another module that has been under consideration to accept those certificates for single-family structures that may or may not be under your jurisdiction. There might be spec houses that are being built that may be privately owned, owner occupied, or maybe rentals. If they're rentals, then they're under your jurisdiction. If they're owner occupied, they're not.
Correct.
But the question was whether a separate module could be added that would accept those compliance certificates in order to centralize RVs and CVs compliance certificates all in one system, in one record management system, and then relieve the town clerks from recording those in land records.
Yeah, so there's a lot of caveats to that statement. There's not a statutory driver for the Division of Fire Safety to capture that information and have a legal mandate to do that. It definitely would be scope creep in regards to the Division of Fire Safety's mission. This is well outside of our statutory obligations. And I will also say how the document is stored and where the document is stored is would require a large amount of discussion in regards to who needs to have access to that, and stakeholders would have to be incorporated in that choice and decision. But currently, the Division of Fire Safety will have the ability for RVs and CVs certifications for buildings that we have jurisdiction over to be part of our new records management system.
Okay. Um,
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yep.
Sorry. Yes. Where are you guys at in the development of the system? I guess, or when will it come online?
Wow. The current schedule right this minute is, go live date of the week before September 1st. So
This
the
year?
end of, next year, sorry.
year.
So 26.
Yep.
But that is subject to, this is a very, very heavy lift, very substantial project for a division for like ours.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
And so my comment, I guess, is that, when I think about, could this system incorporate records from the 253 town clerks we have across the state? When an RBS certificate is filed with the town clerk, I mean, it's in the record on their computer. You're able to access it if you're in the clerk's office. But I can't, I think we would be missing tons of information if we thought that could be transferred easily to DFS when they get their platform up and running. I mean, I'm thinking about a title searcher looking to make sure that this was somewhere, would have to go, bouncing around to find it.
I can shed some light on that. I have a lot of unfortunate institutional knowledge now about APIs, systems talking to other systems. Usually there's a cutoff date where something transitions, where data stays in one location and data moves forward. And there's usually a solid stop and start for that process. But the ability, I know for a fact that not every zoning administrator in the state of Vermont utilizes the same software. And every different type of software to talk to another type of software requires a process called an API. And that would be outside of probably a state's financial abilities to be able to fund such a program like that. I have 4 APIs and it took a substantial amount of work to get those 4 APIs, just 4 of them.
So what you're talking about is there would have to be a date certain before which
You're looking in the town record.
you're looking at town records, and after which you could look at, you would be looking in the public or DFS database, right? So potentially it could add a second place for attorneys to look during the title search process. If for property for sales that are sort of, within a year or two, perhaps.
The year of construction, so
Yes.
you can kind of determine which direction to go in. Yeah. Good work.
I don't even know if I want to ask. Again, I'm going to ask because I do have the experts here. From what I understand about that IECC, anytime that there's a change in a building status, there should be a new certificate that's generated for that building status. And as things move forward in our future codes for the IECC, that need's even going to shrink greater. So if there's an addition, those requirements to certify that building will become that. What does that process look like today in Vermont in regards to, I have an existing building, it's going to change the use of that. I mean, the energy requirements also change for that building. Is that a driver for a new certification at that point from the current codes and standards? Okay. Thank you.
Well, usually in those situations, oftentimes it's a building that never had a code certificate filed in the first place, either because of the age of the building or just the fact it didn't happen. Whereas technically, there's definitely many instances where a code certificate, quote unquote, should be completed. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like I don't know that we see those certificates being filed for renovations, alterations. You do see.
Yeah.
Not to the same percent as new construction.
No, like I think I've said in a previous meeting, for some reason, the window Pella or someone like caught on and.
Yeah,
we have a
they- yeah, right,
bazillion,
yeah.
Like, not so much for others. So, yeah, but it's not as consistent probably as new construction.
I think the record keeping piece of this doesn't have a substantial impact on the current status of number of certificates filed. You know, that's still lagging from where it should be. And I don't know that shifting whether it's going to DPS or if it would be going to DFS would have any, you know, major impact on that process. So I don't see that shifting, whereas though now towns that do issue certificates of occupancy, and every town is different, there's a variety of different ways that they permit and everything else too, but like at least in the towns that issue COs, they cannot issue that CO until the RB certificate has been filed. They've received that completed certificate and it's been filed. That would change then in this scenario. If the certificates aren't going to the town, they're going to DFS, you know, that would have to be a factor to be accounted for there as well too.
Well, the single family home certificates aren't gonna go to DVFS though, so.
But that's being asked here as one of the part of it, right?
Yeah, it is one of the
Yeah.
part ABs. So, and these are all real. I can't argue against that point. There's no way for me to have that same safeguard in my new RMS system. And even if the case was for me to bring forward all RB certificates, because there has to be an initiator in my system to tell me that a project is happening. So in my case, every project that I get a permit on is going to be an initiator for that system that say, I need these documents. When it comes to an owner occupied single family occupancy, I have no initiator. So I would have no way to capture or mandate that in my system.
But I would think that there would be an increase on commercial and all the public buildings under your jurisdiction, because one of the things you mentioned is that if it's not in the system, they'll get some kind of continuous reminder.
Yeah.
You still haven't submitted your CV certificate, you still haven't submitted your CV certificate, which we certainly don't have that now. And I would say there's way less CV certificates filed than RV certificates by far, by leaps and bounds.
Still learning stuff about this. All right, well, so the question is, well, there's three parts of this question. We're, I guess, assuming that the compliance certificates for public buildings will be captured by Division of Fire Safety, and hoping that there will also be a module for single family, so that there will be a central repository. But that I think is still in process, and we'll see.
I think that's a no right now. That's what I heard.
Right this minute, we are capturing all the buildings that we have jurisdiction over, outside of owner occupied single family homes. So that's currently where
Well, I mean, you're not capturing them now. That's what you're working on for the system that will be live next year.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. All right, so then A here is, under this bullet point, is considering whether a pre-construction energy code certificate filing should be added to the existing permit process for public buildings, with post-construction verification required to obtain the occupancy permit. So then the thought here, I think, is that by asking, as part of the permit process, asking the whoever has applied for the permit, whether it's the architect or the builder or the owner, asking to get the compliance certificate or a pre-construction compliance certificate filled out. That is a way of alerting the architect, owner, builder to any things that are missing, any requirements that are not being met. So I don't know whether you have thoughts on that, Landon?
I do. So I'm not really sure how that could work into a workflow. I also want to raise the concern of duplicating work for any individual. We have learned through time that trying to get people to initiate a process on their own and then close a process out on their own is an extremely difficult process. Adding documentation to a process of having to file or pre-file a permit could be problematic, especially outside of my RMS system or the Division of Fire Safety's workflow. This would follow a workflow that I currently have for my construction permit process. And this would follow my new, or the Division of Fire Safety's new RMS systems workflow. They don't file all of their certificates and information up front, but when they file the construction permit, it would initiate our process starting saying, an example of what the RMS system will do is you file a construction permit. It's going to say at the end of your construction permit, to close out your permit, you have to file your RBs or CB certificate, depending on the occupancy type, and you have to complete your final valuation form to identify any changes in the cost of the project between the start of the project and the end of the project. So those two things are going to happen before the Division of Fire Safety in the state of Vermont's RMS system will let that project close out. Right. This seems like it takes it a step further where you're looking to pre-certify, you're looking for certification documentation before that process starts.
I understand the intention to be, when you're filing for a permit, there are certain requirements in order to obtain a permit, right? So I think that the point of this, the way I understand it anyway, the point of this would be to add this to that list of things that need to be done in order to obtain a permit. That point in the process.
I'd like to comment on that also then. That would be well outside. I have done my best since I've been able to be involved with this group to educate myself in regards to the IECC. And I've been in the code world for 30 years this year. And I have a very difficult time following, comprehending, and trying to make workflows out of that document and associate that with my everyday process of the 304 other code books that I have. So what I'm saying is that us adding this process to our plan review would be well outside of the division's education, scope, and abilities.
I see this top point as a consideration outside of the context of BFS, but more in the context of how RBs is currently structured and/or amending RBs to somehow put this into action at the town by town level as far as a town by town permitting process, because this is where, from a local permitting process, something like this could have some impact on awareness and maybe lead to better, more consistent filing of completed code certificates at the end. But I don't see it doesn't jive with your role. This is more a local permitting matter. I can see it being rolled out.
Well, right now, there's a requirement that whenever anyone is going to apply for a permit in a municipality, that they have to provide information about RBs or CBs. That's like the educational moment.
Yeah.
Right.
But I could see where a town and their building permit require from the applicant at least which compliance pathway are you using in the RBs or CBs to show compliance with the energy.
I see.
Not pre-filling out a code certificate. I don't think that would be effective, but at least getting that acknowledgement at the outset before the permit's issued.
Oh, Sandy.
I'm gonna urge the working group to take 100-year perspective on this issue. Right now, there are 253 or 254 towns in Vermont. And what Steve is describing is a little bit of a confusion, sorry, Steve, between zoning permits and building permits. There are very few towns in Vermont, I think 4, that look at residential building permits. And to continue over the next 100 years in a model that activates some local staff member to do something with RBs and CBs is unrealistic. I think the League of Cities and Towns will fight that. And already very, very few towns give that information for the RBs to someone building, because most towns don't have building permits. So in the next 100 years, I think this group has already said, it makes sense to make these 2 building codes in the family of the other 304 building codes. So the way this hopefully will proceed in the next 100 years is that there's only 1 building permit. And for instance, the building code is chapter 11 in the IRC, that it gets subsumed into the rest of the building permits. This is the simplest form of governance. So that is why we have been asking, and the builders are begging, that the code process for the energy code compliance is as simple as the rest of the building permit. And that's why we're trying to encourage this group to shift the boat in this direction. That is the direction that New Hampshire and Maine and Connecticut and Rhode Island all follow. In fact, most of the other 50 states. We are a little state and we don't have the resources to make every single town official get involved with RVs.
Okay.
I would just like to follow up with that. So all 50 states are not the same and they're not similar in regards to their structure, their oversight. There may be public works in a town that has 5 departments under that public works, and one of those is this subject matter. In New Hampshire, you may have a community that only has 3,000 people and there's only 1 inspector that does do everything. But you can go to one of the seacoast towns. I just spent a couple of days with all of these people. And they will have a specific individual that this is their job and their title and their responsibility and their institutional knowledge. So to keep quantifying and saying, you know, that this really falls into one pathway is not really a factual statement in its full capacity of saying all 50 states really do this. That's
Well, I don't
Yeah.
think you're saying all 50 states do that,
No.
but do any single model. But
Right.
the question is, what if the model is going to work for the model?
Yes.
Right? So anyway, let's Tom.
Another quick one. This is one where it currently does require that. So there is a design certification and a construction certification. Design is equated to pre-construction. Construction is equated.
In CDs.
Yeah. Yeah, in the seats. It is exactly the way it's laid out here. Already required that way. The architect has to certify before construction that it's designed to, and then post-construction, the contractor has to certify that it is built to the codes as they're required.
And how is that recorded?
It oftentimes it's right on the drawing sheets, and presumably DFS has been looking at that.
How many single family homes are built within a designer of record in the state of Vermont?
I know I'm trying to hold this only to commercial.
Okay.
Steve's, yeah.
But it's a very big gap there.
All right. So this is really talking about RVs, I think. Well, like it does say RVs and CDs. So there is a difference there. I'm trying to figure out how to sort this out. Is there anybody have any thoughts on whether to add a recommendation about including some sort of pre-construction certification or pre-construction certificate filing that would be similar to the RB's process into the CB's process, I guess is really what we're talking about. Is there any support for that? Or are we we'll leave that one on the table? Anybody in favor? See no one. All right. B is, should DFS be asked or required to add the capability to accept data uploads from Laura Dorsey test software? I think we can just, that's clear enough just to take a vote on. Anybody in favor of that? See no one in favor of that either.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
This is B under the third bullet under priorities for the final report that were discussed last meeting, or not discussed last meeting rather. should DFS be asked or required to add the capability to accept data uploads from energy specialist blower door test software. So it would be adding a process at DFS, but it would be a way of recording actual test blower door test results in that record at DFS. Anybody in favor of that? Okay, I'm seeing no one. C is when, or we could say if DFS's new record management system is the central repository for code compliance certificates for both public buildings and single family owner occupied. So if and when that happens, should the legislature amend statute to eliminate filing certificates in town records? Anybody in favor of that? I'm in favor of that.
I can't vote on that when they've said that they're not gonna do single family homeowner occupied buildings.
This is a conditional if. If and when. Okay. Anybody in favor of that? We got some people in favor of that. All right. Why don't we take a little break? It's 2:30, I think, 33. And we'll tackle the next sheet when we get back and try to get through that in an hour and a half.